Hello and welcome back to The Movies Made Us Do It. Matt, how are you?
I'm pretty good, sir. How are you?
I'm very well. I am excited to discuss Ringu from 1998. How did you first see Ringu?
Pirate. We saw it on a pirate. I've got a feeling it was a VCD.
Oh, classic pirate material.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a VCD.
Yeah.
But so, as I've mentioned a number of times, my best mate's massive Japanese fan.
Yeah.
And when we heard about this movie, it was like, okay, well, we must see that then. So we got went to the old Chinese acquirer of
course. Yeah.
And that's what we got it. And yeah.
Let's go on a trip to London.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. And well, I guess we'll get into your thoughts.
At this point, we might have had somebody who, I think at this point,
brought it over.
Someone who could get them for us.
Yeah. We used to have a guy. This is back in the good old days.
Yeah.
Used to be a guy who literally just came into the pub. With bags of CDs. I was just like, what films do you guys want? And that was just somehow, back in the day, perfectly acceptable. No one questioned this. Even the bar staff knew it happened. It's just a thing. And no one questioned it. We always used to ask for, we just used to make up porn. And just be like, can you get this? And whatever, insert the most disgusting porn thing you could think of. Just come up with a name for it, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I'll see if I can get it.
I used to like that.
The answer was never no, so no. It was like you could get more and more ridiculous, and he would always. I don't know if he'd ever actually look it up. I'm guessing he was probably like, "I'm not looking that shit up," but he'd just say anything, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'll see if I got it. I'll bring it next time." Okay.
I used to. What I like is the guy he would come into the pub. It probably it might even be the same guy for
probably
a while.
Was. He probably had a good business going for a while there.
Yeah.
This is back in the day when you could buy any movie that's in the cinema. You could go to a car boot sale and buy them.
Yeah.
Because they'd just be selling them at car boot sales. I mean, there was this one, it was suddenly 1 month they went mental everywhere, and the police just descended on everyone doing it. But for a good couple of years, this was just going on.
Every now and every couple of months, though, wouldn't they? I think they go and raid somebody, confiscate all their machines and things, and then they just set up somewhere else, like they do in these sorts of things. But I used to like it. The guy would come in, and I think it was like a gauge to see who his audience would.
Oh yeah.
So the first bag full of Western movies would come out. And then the second bag of Chinese and Japanese and Korean movies would come out, and then if it was then the porn bag.
Then the porn, yeah. If all else fails, drunk people, sex. So I think I first saw this on DVD. Didn't see a pirate version of it. So I think it would have been whenever it was that Tartan DVD release.
Yes.
So that's the first time I saw Ringu. And I fell in love with it immediately.
Yeah.
And then I think after that I saw Ring 2 and probably Ring 0 before I saw Spiral. Right. But you know what? I guess that's another story.
I was going to ask that question at some point. Had you seen Spiral?
Yes. So Spiral, for those that don't know, bizarrely, I don't know why Toho decided to do this, was released at the same time that Ring was in Japan, which is mental.
To see if it would work,
and it didn't.
It could cash in.
Shocking! It did not work. People did not watch Spiral. But ultimately, once Ring became very popular in the West, they did re-release Spiral over here, and we got to see it. It's cracktastic that Spiral. I like it. It's closer to the book, apparently.
Would be confused as to why it's like the sequel, because it goes for the more sci-fi elements of the book.
Yeah, so I've never read the books, but the sequel is apparently based on the books more than Ring 2 is based on the books.
And Sadako, I think, most people will know, even if they don't know the name, they will know who Sadako is.
Or Samara, if you watch that shit US remake.
Oh, actually, I don't think it's that bad.
I don't like it. I know you. Yeah, I know you don't mind it.
It's not.
It's not terrible.
But put it this way: it's better than the Korean one.
Yes. Agreed.
But she doesn't look like that in the book either.
No.
So the book is way more sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
So the director of Spiral, because it's not the same director, but they were filmed at the same time, and it's got a few of the characters from Ring.
Yes, very sparingly, because I think they were shooting it about the same time.
One of them was basically just an autopsy corpse.
Yep. Basically, depending on which sequel you go with, she ends up killing her dad at the end of this one, or they all fucking die.
Yes.
it's one or the other, depending on which sequel you pick.
Yeah, so basically it crashed and burned. I mean, it's filmed entirely differently.
It doesn't fit. Different. It like tonally, it's all over the. It just doesn't feel like it's. Yeah. It doesn't feel like a sequel to that film. Ring 2, different to the novel as it may be, feels like a sequel to Ringu.
Exactly. Yeah. So they redid. It's like this wasn't working. Let's like do another one because. The first, the Ring.
Well, I think it was only when it got big when Ringu got big in the West that they were like, "Oh fuck, actually, let's make a proper sequel and ignore Spiral."
Hong Kong. It was huge in Hong Kong.
Ringu or Spiral?
Ringu,
yeah.
Yeah, when it got big on it just got it snowballed and it was like, okay, maybe we should do a proper what they consider a proper sequel to it.
And it gets really weird with the super later sequels.
Yeah.
Because some of them they start doing sequels to Spiral later on. So then there are like Spiral sequels and Ring sequels. It's weird.
But the other thing I haven't seen either is the original 95 TV version.
No, I have not seen that one either.
I've seen clips and I saw some. I watched a review of it because I thought, okay, I better watch.
I hope it's like Uzumaki because that's how I imagine it would look like.
It's more like the book.
Yeah, so more sci-fi.
Again, it's way more sci-fi. And Sadako is basically just like a woman, just like a lady. Pretty girl walking around,
which is kind of what they do in Spiral, right? Because she ends up coming in human form, right? And she starts dating that guy, if I remember rightly.
Yes, yeah.
But she just looks like a normal girl. She's not,
Yeah, she's not remotely. Well, I would say remotely scary because it's not really a horror.
No.
Sort of thing. It's got sort of horror elements, but it's way more sci-fi.
Yeah.
I mean I think it's in the book, and I don't know whether it's in some of the other versions. The actual virus itself is a creation of both Sadako's power and the smallpox virus.
Mm-hmm.
Which you just think, well, that's fucking mental. But fine, okay. If
that
that's
sounds extremely Japanese.
And the other thing that most versions leave out is the fact that Sadako's intersex.
Yes.
They
don't even mention it in the movies,
certainly
to my knowledge.
No.
And come Ring Zero, which I think, despite having some nice moments, kind of ruins the whole fucking thing by showing us way too much of Sadako, and she's just a really pretty girl who's picked on in drama school, and
they split her though, don't they?
They do. So her personality splits into the shit happens in this movie, which is kind of expanded on in Ring 2, where she's with her mum, and her mum's kind of outed as this fraud or supposed fraud, and all of that. And from that point on, Sadako becomes two things. She becomes this angelic little girl who goes to school. And the evil Sadako, and it doesn't really work for me. Ring's birthday,
I kind of like it.
There's bits I like. There's bits.
It's another one of those Japanese things that just goes, let's just go mental.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, yeah.
Let's just see and go a bit mental.
And to its credit, actually, it feels a lot more sci-fi than horror-y Ring Zero. It has horror moments for sure, but
it leans a lot more into the psychic stuff, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, heavily.
We're just saying because there's a lot of psychic stuff in
Ring and Ring 2, but certainly Birthday goes.
Which the American version pretty much cuts out.
Yeah,
because the dad doesn't have any psychic powers in the American version.
No. Shall we get into it?
Right, let's go.
So we open with some water and the amazing music. The score of this, and I think this is the first time I'd heard a score like this, probably, or one of the first times.
It's the unnerving sort of. Oh, how would you describe it? It's like a buzz.
It's ambient, really. It's mostly. It feels mostly ambient, and it kind of builds. But I would say, without this soundtrack, this movie would be nowhere near as terrifying as it is.
No,
because
it's very helpful.
Yeah, because aside from this introduction, which we're about to get, this film starts off very mundane. It's a very mundane. Not much happens in this movie. If you read the plot synopsis of this movie, it's like nothing really happens. And then girl comes out of TV. In terms of horror, anyway. Sorry, there's story, but in terms of horror, right? What you would call horror. But this film is one of the most unnerving films to watch, and I think a massive part of that is the music, because it just builds that ambient that tension in the music just continues on. That droning ambience is amazing.
And the beginning with the water, the boiling ocean, with the sound is like, wow, what it just sort of like, what the fuck is in that water?
Well, I mean, Ring 2 really hits, like, goes heavy on the water, doesn't it? Ring 2's like all about the ocean. Where here, obviously, we've got the...
We'll probably get there later, but it's heavily implied things about the water.
Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah.
And, it's like, a lot of the best movies are stupidly enhanced by their music. I mean...
Yes.
Even if you go back to Jaws.
Oh,
we've done Jaws. Without the music in Jaws, you'd have nothing.
Or Star Wars. I mean, imagine A New Hope without John Williams.
It would be weird.
It would just be bizarre.
I have seen people do clips taking the music out, and it is weirdly dull.
Yeah, I imagine it would be. So we open our kind of introduction, which is the only not numbered date. We open with Masami and Tomoko, and they're kind of, I guess they're having a girls' night in, right? And they're talking about this videotape recorded by a boy in Izu, and it's got this kind of fabled curse. You know, it's the standard like sleepover spooky story, right? And you know, they're talking about it, and Masami says, you know, the person watched it, and they were called afterwards and told that they will die in 7 days after watching it. And
the glee of the second girl.
I know, Masami, yeah, she's like,
as she points at Tome,
you will die in 7 days.
Her grin is amazing. She's like, she could be a horror character herself. That grin.
Yeah, and I love what they do here, where Tomoko has watched this tape, and she looks terrified and upset, and Masami's like, "What did you didn't watch it, did you? Like, you haven't watched this tape. Like, what are you doing? You're just messing around. You're joking with me." And it's such a human, friendly reaction where it clearly is real and really does bother her, but then she plays it off as a joke, and she's like, "Oh no, I'm just joking," and like Masami's like, "Oh god, you got me," and they're kind of laughing, but you can tell Tomoko is actually terrified now. She's like, this has actually happened to me. And of course she's like joking, and they're laughing, and they start play fighting on the floor, and then of course the phone rings, and Masami looks at Tomoko and realizes, oh shit, this really did happen then. And of course they're kind of worried as they kind of discuss or kind of consider whether they're even going to answer the phone. Now Masami does answer the phone, and it turns out to be her dad, I think, or her mom.
No, it's Tomome's mother, isn't it?
Oh yes, sorry, it's Tomoko's mother. You're right. Yeah. Sorry, it's her mother. And so, you know, it's all so like, fake.
I think she's at her brother's she's at a baseball game or something, or she's at her brother's baseball game.
I think it might be the baseball game, because the baseball game is what comes on TV.
Yeah.
Shortly after the phone call.
So there's extra innings, so she'll be back late.
She'll be back late, yeah. So Tomoko is then obviously downstairs with the phone, and then the TV turns on. And it is the baseball game, which I assume is the baseball game where her mother family are.
Yeah, but I'll presume so.
And then of course it changes to I think we do see the well.
I think so.
We see a shot of the well. Obviously, we don't see anything more than that. We just see her kind of reaction, and we hear some movement and things, right?
Yeah.
But it's all kind of shot on her face and her reaction. And then we get that very, very late 90s style. It almost feels like it was done in like Windows Movie Maker, inverted color kind of shot, and then it freezes and freeze frame. And
either that or she's been shot by a Dalek.
Yeah, or shot by a Dalek, sure. Sometime later, presumably not long later, Reiko is a reporter, and she's investigating the video curse. She's already investigating this curse when she finds out that her niece, Tomoko, and all of her 3 friends have died. They all died at the same time, on the same night, and their faces are kind of horrific. Yeah. In fact, we see one later on.
Yeah, she doesn't realize it's a separate thing because she's interviewing kids on this thing.
Yeah, she's doing an interview.
Yeah, and they tell her a story about a boyfriend and girlfriend who died in a car.
Yes. And they'd been watching it in a cabin.
Yeah. So after the funeral is when she puts that all together, and she gets her friend to look into that sort of into the car as well as what's happening with her. They realise that what happened. That they're connected. They were in the same place.
Yeah. So she also discovers, I think, at the funeral, because obviously she attends the funeral with her son Yoichi. She discovers, I think, at the funeral that Masami survived but is insane and is now at a mental hospital.
Yes.
And
you pick up more of her stuff in Ring 2, I believe.
Yes. So yeah, she attends the funeral, and that in itself, that whole funeral scene, again, it's so hard to explain.
I think it's
tense and unsettling.
It's a Japanese funeral for a start. So Japanese funerals are a bit
true
different for English ones or American ones, and they've got that sort of it's that weird sort of people are just sat there on their knees in this room but not doing anything, and it's like they're paying their respects, and then they're wandering around, and the kid sort of wanders away. And wanders in, and you see Tomoko's feet going up the stairs.
Yeah,
she runs up, and
because Yoichi sees it, right?
Yoichi sees her.
Because Yoichi is well, and in fact, in the sequel, confirmed, heavily implied to have inherited the psychics from his father.
Yeah. So he follows her upstairs, and he's in her bedroom.
Yeah.
And that's when his mother finds him.
Yeah, Reiko finds him, and I think she finds the photos there as well.
Yeah. And he says that Tomoko told him to go up there.
Yes. Yeah. But of course, it's just kids being kids. But obviously these photos are kind of distorted and weird. Their faces are all weird.
And she goes outside, doesn't she? She talks to some of the kids.
Yes.
And where she basically discovers that there was more.
Yeah, because she's like, "Oh, well, you guys," because she can see a group of girls as she leaves the funeral.
Yeah.
And they're not mourning. They look terrified. If that makes sense. They don't look upset. They look terrified. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, "Hey, were you her friends?" And they sort of say yes. And like I said, so she's had these photos now, Tomoko's photos from the past week, and so this is the Monday, right? Because it starts dating days, doesn't it? At this point,
yeah.
Where we because this is the first day that she sees the tape. So, this is the September 13th, Monday. She finds the cabin, and it's in Izo, and so she goes there, and she's kind of drawn to this tape that's in reception. It's in the reception room.
There's a massive collection.
Yeah, there's huge, loads of tapes.
It's a big collection of tapes, and that's the only one that's in a blank case.
Yeah, and she's kind of drawn to it, though. Like, she's immediately drawn to it, and she's like, that tape. And I think, don't you see, like, some, like, grainy footage of the tape for some reason as well? I made the mistake of watching all 3 movies this week, and I might be blurring them a bit.
The weirdest thing is, when I was looking this up, so I watched this, and I watched loads of other bits and pieces, and I started reading stuff up about it, and I ended up in the weirdest of holes, and I ended up onto sort of like looking at like Japanese ghosts, and I was looking at Japanese ghost stories.
Oh, they're interesting. They're interesting as hell.
God, it's like, I've looked at these things before, but when you go back to them, and it's like they're all connected to this sort of, this story. It's like, oh Jesus! So I ended up in this loophole of, and because I've read so much about all the other stories,
you're not sure now.
Annoyingly, it's all blurring in my brain.
That's okay. Well, we'll go with this summary I've got right in front of me. So she's drawn to this tape, and she asks if she can basically take it, have it. And she decides she's going to watch it. And, at this stage...
She's staying in the room, isn't she?
She's staying in the room, and she's like, hey, I want to rent a video. I'm going to rent that one. I need that too.
There's like a book with a few sort of things written in it.
Yeah.
And, she's sort of... At first, before she finds the tape, she's beginning to think, oh, this is all just rubbish.
Yeah, and she's like, well, I'll just watch the tape and see what's on it anyway.
Yeah,
she's a
reporter.
First,
she goes into the room, and there's no sign of the tape in the room. Or anything on the TV, and I think she's a bit sort of like, maybe nothing happens. So she goes to the reception, she talks to the receptionist, then she finds the tape, then she goes back into the room.
Yeah, and she puts the tape on, and I guess
nothing, isn't there?
I guess Sadako rewound the tape after or something. I don't know. Whatever, or maybe they did it in the cabin. I don't know, but anyway. Or it was auto rewind. It was a VHS with auto rewind. Those existed. That's entirely.
I was going to say, of course they are. That even though they were scared, they're dutiful Japanese people.
Yeah, that's true.
And they will rewind the tape. God damn it.
Their honor is at stake. So she watches the tape, and I don't really know how to describe the tape, or what you see. It's
first of all, you see a flash of a face.
Yeah.
Above, like looking,
it's in a mirror,
like a tunnel, and at the top of this tunnel, there's a face looking down at you, and then it switches to a wall with an oval mirror on it.
Yep.
And a woman brushing her hair,
and she looks back at the camera effectively.
Yeah, and there is a flash where the mirror changes position.
Yes,
and in the mirror there is what looks like a girl in a
Sadako-shaped girl
dress. Yeah, Sadako-shaped girl, white dress with a long black hair covering her face, and then it quickly, gets back. There is then a shot of words that look like they might have been from a newspaper or something, moving around.
Yeah, they move. Yeah,
eruption appears.
Yep,
and then it goes back to the girl. Oh no!
Don't we get the crawling people and stuff?
Then we see that's right. Yes, then we see the crawling people and sort of like rolling down a hill, sort of thing. And then I think you see a guy with a towel on his head pointing.
Yeah, and we'll find out who that is later.
And then we see an eye.
Yes, and it says Sada.
With Sad written in it.
I think it's Sada. Yeah.
Sada. Yeah, it's Sada. And then I think it goes to the well.
Yes. Then it cuts to the well, and it does this thing where you see her hand just come out. It literally just cuts as she's coming out. You just see the top of her hand.
You barely see it.
It's like you would only notice it on a repeat watch that happens, because once you've seen the whole thing, at the point that happens, and it cuts just as she's coming out, but just the tip of her fingers or her hand coming up, and it cuts. And the tape ends. So it's it's quite a disturbing mix of seemingly unrelated images. And
And weirdly, so this one's actually completely understated compared to the other ones.
Yeah. Like, yeah. But I loved it.
And the Korean version is like really like all these weird blues.
Yeah.
And like weird sort of visions and stuff. And it's very odd. I didn't realize. Did you know that Doona Bae played Sadako in the Korean one?
I didn't know.
No, I didn't realize that at all. And you can see her face all the time in that version as well.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Do you know why that exists, by the way?
Well, it's a sign of rebellion in Japan for your hair to be in front of your face.
No, the Korean version.
Oh no, sorry, I thought you meant why the hair is. No, go on.
No, the Korean version exists because at the time there was a ban on imports from Japan.
Oh, so they were like, we'll make our own.
So they made their own. Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough.
Which is why that one exists.
Yeah.
But the difference in the the videotapes is quite pronounced.
Yeah. But after the tape ends, she sees the reflection in the TV.
Yeah, behind it, basically like in this the settee behind her.
Yes.
Sadako is stood.
Yeah. And then of course she receives the phone call.
Yeah. Which again we don't hear. We just hear that weird, almost like grinding.
It sounds like the grinding of metal, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like
a pipe, like if you were running something along a pipe or something like that.
Scraping along a guitar string or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, we don't hear, but she says basically 7 days sort of thing, doesn't she?
No, you don't hear any of that. It's
when she drops the phone, she moves away. She says it.
Yeah, but you don't know.
She says like a week or something.
Yeah, but she doesn't. You don't know whether she says that because presumably she says that because she was told that on the phone. But she obviously already knows that it's 7 days because she's been told it's 7 days.
Yeah.
Until you die once you hear the phone call. So we then cut to the next day, Tuesday, and we see Yoichi. And he's with Ryuji, I think is his name. Which is fucking. I can't. Whenever I watch this movie, at the end of this movie, I'm like, I feel like Sanada could probably kick the shit out of Sadako. Like I can't help it every time. I'm like, I feel like Sanada could probably take her.
Yeah, I mean. He's Sanada. So.
He's Sanada. I'm like, I just half expect him to just.
I mean, that's the weird thing with Sanada is that he's in so many sort of martial arts movies or samurai movies and stuff like that, and that's primarily I think how American audiences know him.
I think it is American audience, Western in general audiences for sure.
Like Last Samurai and stuff like that and things. But he was in a lot of sort of
he's a very accomplished actor,
like romantic series and all sorts of stuff in Japan. So he's he get used through all the things.
Yeah, he's a really accomplished actor. For sure.
But it does make you think. There are times when he sort of looks at the camera, or he looks at not exactly the camera, but you know what I mean. He's got that look, and you just sort of think he's way too intense for this.
Yeah.
This sort of like supposed teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
with psychic abilities. But Sanada's fucking awesome.
But they anyway, Yoichi and his father meet, and it's like this real rainy, stormy day.
Yeah.
And he basically, like, he doesn't even talk to his father. Yeah, he just looks at him and walks past without saying anything. And of course we see that Reiko basically enlists him, doesn't she? And it turns out that is her ex-husband. And
you have to mention that poor old Reichi, he's basically left on his own a lot.
Yeah. And to be honest, when he is around, it mostly consists of him sitting or standing somewhere whilst Reiko screams Yoichi at him. That seems to be most of his life in this film. Is her just screeching Yoichi at him.
Yeah, because when he's got that basically there's a bit where she comes home from work, doesn't it? And that it's before the funeral.
Yeah.
And she's running late. She comes in and he's already,
he gives her a dress and stuff. He's like properly ready.
He set out her clothes for her.
Yeah.
He's like, wow. It's like this is weird flashbacks to the 80s kids, isn't it? It's quite funny.
Yeah.
You'd probably get arrested if you tried to put that in a movie these days.
Yeah. So, Riku basically explains to Rigi like what's going on, and she sort of insists that he take a photo of her. And the whole time he's taking the photo, like Riku knows what's coming because she's already seen the photos of the kids.
Yeah.
And she's fully expecting to see this. Of course, he takes a photo with the Polaroid, and we see the blurred face. Again, that doesn't sound scary, but when it's in context with the orchestral sting and everything else, it somehow becomes really disturbing, this slightly blurry face.
The main problem with this movie is trying to describe it as a horror movie.
You can't describe it without watching it.
It's the thing about this movie is it's all about the build-up and the tension.
100%.
And the sort of the underlying... It's very
unsettling.
Yeah, it's got that sort of Lynch feeling, It's like normal life, but there's weird tensions underneath it. There's happy, well, unhappy families, I would say, actually, but there's a sort of family life, but underneath there are monsters. It's that sort of the weirdness of the underbelly that exists side by side with the normality of everything.
Yeah. Now, she's obviously disturbed upon seeing the Polaroid, and I think she goes outside to get some air.
Yeah, she goes into the balcony and he's going to watch that.
Yeah, and Ryuji...
Well, he puts the movie in, he starts the movie.
Yeah, well, she's against her objections, because she's like, don't watch it, it would be a terrible idea. And he's like, no.
He's very dismissive, isn't it?
He doesn't believe that this is anything.
Yeah, and he obviously has... The thing is, they never really they obviously it's obvious he's got psychic abilities.
Yes,
but they never really explain anything. They don't explain why they broke up.
No, although I don't think they need to.
No, they don't. But what I mean is that leads you to sort of
speculate
on a number of things, and the fact that his initial dismissing, but then talking about how there's a conversation about how stories start and things like that, which again is picked up later on when they're on a boat, when they're on a ferry, I think.
Yeah.
But he's like, it's just silly things. It just starts here and there, and he's very dismissive at first. Later on, when they're talking about it, it's a little different. It's a little darker. But at this point, whether it's because he's trying to comfort her because she's clearly distressed, or whether he genuinely is, dismissive of it, because it does make you think, well, dude, you've got fucking psychic powers, so why are you so dismissive of this videotape?
Yeah, it depends what he can pick up on, I guess, because it's never really explained the extent of what his powers do or what he can do. Yeah. Like, can he read minds, or can he just get visions? Like, it's never really explained.
It feels like he almost like an empath, because sometimes it feels like
yeah.
And obviously he gets full-on visions later on.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's a very odd thing, and the visions I presume I've always presumed that he has a little power, and that the visions and things are boosted by Sadako.
Yeah, I think that's fair to assume. So he watches the tape against her objections, and then, crucially, he asks Reiko to create a copy of the tape so that he can examine it in his kind of free time.
Yeah.
And we then cut to the following day, and we see Riju, he's sitting on a bench, and this woman in a white dress approaches him slowly.
Yeah, and, with very heavy footsteps.
Very heavy footsteps. He's like writing something in his notebook, like glyphs or something. And
Yeah, I'm not sure whether he's a science teacher or a maths teacher.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think he's a science teacher because there's sort of he's got mathematic equations on his blackboard, hasn't he?
Yeah. But the girl disappears basically suddenly. And he basically goes home and he finds Rico waiting for him. And then they go in the house, and this is where they start dissecting the tape. So they sit down and are watching the tape.
Yeah.
And this is where we kind of basically what we described earlier is what they do. They go through and
it's a weird sort of scene there because first of all they go to his apartment, sort of come office.
Yeah.
They watched it on there, and he's frustrated that he can't see enough, and she says, "Oh, you can't see it on a normal TV properly." So his girlfriend, well, I say girlfriend, his student, that's me doing quotes in the air. His student comes in and
this summary actually says student or girlfriend.
Yes, exactly.
Like even the people that wrote this wiki are not sure.
Well, she in later things it is clear that she's
yes, yeah.
But it's that dodgy sort of teacher student thing, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
She's my student. It's like, okay, right, I get you, mate. And she says something about his publisher or something, and he's like, "Oh, tell him I'll do it later or something." And she's like, "You tell him." And he just leaves her in there, and she pisses about with his equation on the board.
Yeah.
And then laughs, and then it cuts to sort of them in.
Now, of course, May or Mai, she's like kind of the star of Ring 2.
Yes,
she's one of the main characters of Ring 2. Here, she's kind of there, but not much.
Yeah, she appears like here, and then you see her a bit later.
But we do get some findings from this. Reiko quite astutely points out that the shot of the mother. Or the woman, sorry, I should say, the woman, brushing her hair. When she looks back, she's like, that's weird. Like, you couldn't film that because the camera would be in shot when she moves to the side. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I guess, like, you could get rid of it with special effects, but that would be, like, a lot of work and, it doesn't quite, it would be very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, they do in
the American version after he's watched the thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't he say something like it's a really good student film?
Yeah.
Which I actually quite liked. I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah, that kind of works. It does kind of feel like a weird artsy student thing.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. But of course they do end up finding the hidden message within the tape. The frolic in brine goblins be thine.
Yeah, which is in another dialect. It's not in normal Japanese. It's in not Okinawan.
And it's kind of in the background, isn't it? Because they use the equipment to analyze to get it.
And they basically they look at the eruption thing, and they're trying to figure out the words, trying to get clues from what it is.
Yeah, and obviously they kind of linger on Sada, which will be
Oshima. That's Oshima, which is the dialect that it's in.
Yeah. So yeah, he basically later discovers this, doesn't he? And he on Thursday he discovers this, and he phones Reiko and basically says, "Hey, the hidden message on the tape is dialect from Oshima Island."
Yeah.
And they go to the library to research the headlines of volcanic eruption, and basically ultimately find an article that's basically the same as what they saw in the video.
Yeah, it just looks like the same layout, and it was 40 years ago.
Yeah. The eruption in the video refers to the prediction of a young woman about the eruption of the mountain, and the fact that it became true.
Yeah.
On the Friday, Reiko and Yuichi take a vacation to her father's house, and that night Ruji, I'm fucking butchering these names. Why did we review this movie? Sanada phones Reiko and says that the woman in the mirror was actually Shizuko Yamamura. And while they're asleep, Reiko encounters the towel man, the man with the towel on his head, and he basically is like pointing at Yoichi, and she can't quite figure it out, and then she wakes up and she sees light coming from the other room, and she opens the door, and sure enough, Yoichi is watching the videotape.
It's actually Tomomo, isn't it? At first, it's the I think it's like the corpse of Tomomo next to her at first. So auntie.
Yes, sorry, yeah, and then it's the towel man. But he's watching the tape and he claims that Tomoko told him to do it. Then we're on to Saturday.
I do love her reaction, how she flings herself around him and tries to sort of, is like,
stop him watching it, get in front of him.
Cover him up. He's like, it's way too late.
It's the end of the tape. Thing. Yeah. So, anyway,
the phone rings as well.
Yes, of course, yeah. Anyway, the pair of the pair head, the ex-couple, head to Ashima. They sail to Ashima, and they start kind of investigating the history of this psychic, or supposed psychic, Shizuko. And she was basically accused of faking supernatural powers. She had this kind of big public display, I guess, in front of residents and like the town. I don't know quite.
She had a display in front of a load.
It was experts, right?
Journalists.
Yeah, it's journalists and like supposed experts. So she had this conference basically where she was going to show her amazing powers. And so
apparently, she's actually based on a real person,
right?
Chizuko Mifune, who was rumored to be a psychic, and then basically when they 1910, I think was the demonstration. And when they basically proclaimed her a charlatan, and she went off and committed suicide.
Oh,
so that's the real life inspiration for the mother for Chizuko.
Yeah. I didn't know it was based on a true story. That's really interesting. But yeah, so when they got to the residence, they discover the mirror, and it's still there.
Yeah.
The
they
mirror's
get
in the room.
Is it Professor? They learn about this professor. Oh Christ, what's his name? Ikuma.
Yeah.
Had something to do with it, and they realised that there's something to do with this, where she came from, and there's somebody running this hotel that might have had something to do with her.
Yes.
So they go to stay in the hotel, and that's where the thing is they're being shown to their room, and you're doing it to me now.
Oh, I can't help it, man.
Kyuji. They're passing the room, and he
stops, doesn't he?
Gets a sort of like a psychic buzz or whatever, and he goes to opens the door, and the woman who's taken him to the room is like, not that one. And
let's just call him Deanna Troy.
Let's call him Deanna Troy. Yeah. He basically, he opens the door, and then they see that the mirror, that mirror is just there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, we're in the right place.
Yeah. And is it? I think it's Ring 2 when you get the extended bit with the mirror, which is actually really creepy. I think it's Ring 2 that does that.
I think so.
When you get Shizuko in the mirror, and then she turns around and she's facing, and then she's like right next to the side of the wall and stuff. It's a really creepy shot. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, they find the mirror.
It gets that's I think that's what I was trying to say earlier on, is that in this movie it's actually quite basic.
It is, yeah. It expands a lot in the sequel.
Yeah.
They kind of get real deep into lore and mythology, the mythos in the second and third movies.
Mm-hmm.
Or the second and 0 movie.
Yeah.
Fucking prequels. It's rarely ever a good idea to do a prequel. Rarely ever is it a good idea.
I do like a good prequel if it's well done.
I like Infernal Affairs 2. That's a prequel I like off the top of my head. There's one. Yeah, so they ask questions anyway. They meet
there's this old guy.
Takashi, and they ask him questions about Shizuko, and he basically ignores them for the most part.
He sort of acknowledges that she lived there.
Yeah, he's like, there's someone by that name lived here once. And
he's like, there was no daughter, and he runs off, sort of thing.
Didn't say anything about a daughter. I just said someone. Yeah. Yes, he's clearly upset and obstructive at that point. Basically after questioning and getting nowhere later that night, Reiko is basically begging that if she dies in his arms.
I love this scene because she's in full panic mode.
She's like, I've got like what, 1 day left at this point. 2 days.
At this point, it's 3 days left.
It's not many. No, there's only because this is like Saturday now. She's got very few
couple of days left. She's got
a couple of days at most,
and she's on full panic mode. And it's not so much for her; she's more thinking about Yoichi, and he's sort of casually, almost smiling, eating food, and sort of he's very blasé about it. And she's like, no, when I die, I want you to be with me. And he's like. And he actually says,
nah.
What he says is, you remember what happened to the girl that was with the girl that died? She went mad. And he's like, you want me to do that, do you? It's like, Jesus Christ, dude.
And also, I'm dating a 16-year-old student. Do you really want to do that to her?
Exactly, yeah. But he does sort of soften a little, and he realizes that she's truly distraught.
yeah. She even if you don't believe it, dude, she clearly does. So
yeah. And the receptionist that showed them to the room, she comes in and she says, "This is the only thing that's left of that time," sort of thing, and she brings in a photo of the mother and was it the professor?
Yeah,
I think it's the professor, isn't it? Yeah. And basically says that's it, and she disappears. And they sort of they look at this picture, and they phone. I think she phones her friend in Tokyo and asks him to look up the professor and her, and I think she says look up Sadako because she would be 40 now or something like that.
Yeah. Or 40 something or other, yeah. Yeah. So he finds Rigi goes out and he finds Takashi basically staring at the sea, and
it's like the next day, isn't it?
It's the Sunday now, and he basically says that their family was afraid of the sea, and that one by one members of their family will die in the sea.
Yeah, he basically says that they're all fishermen in this place.
Yeah,
they all have a healthy
fear of the water,
of the sea because it takes them, sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I keep forgetting her name. The mother. She used to basically just sit on the beach, muttering to herself and watching the ocean.
Yeah,
and she. Basically the fishermen hated her because she just used to stare at the sea and mutter, and they were like, yeah, she's fucking weird.
Yeah.
And he says it. You know, he's asking questions, and he gets all like, no, I'm not saying anything. I'm buggering off. So he tries to escape, doesn't he, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he falls, and Ryuji basically sort of touches him, and you get that sort of the vision. He
gets the psychic vision, yes.
Yeah, which also she gets as well. She gets that. It's almost like he
projects it to her. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see this sort of demonstration.
Yeah. So we see the most of what we will later in Ring 2 see all of. We see the ESP demonstration with Shinzuko and the press, as you said. It's just like journalists and experts and whatever, and they're doing this card thing, aren't they? When the guy's looking at a card and she's got to guess the card.
What it is, I think they're getting a number of people to write down a word.
Yeah.
And then it's sealed in a box or a jar or something. Mm-hmm. It's given to her, and then she writes something down, and the guy then, the adjudicator then, shows the audience what was written on the paper in the jar, and then what she's written, and each one is exactly the same. And there's one journalist at the back who, I don't know whether it's just being a dick, or whether he's just doesn't really believe it. It seems like he's more being a dick. So he shouts out, "She's a fraud."
I'll be honest, if I was there, I wouldn't believe it, but I wouldn't shout it out.
No, of course not.
I just quietly think bullshit, but fine.
He shouts out,
yeah,
it's all fraud, everything, and of course a lot of the other journalists, they start shouting it as well. The mother is getting very distraught. She's
really upset, and
I think she's also picking up on that. It feels like she's picking up on their
hate,
their fear.
Yeah.
And this journalist, he comes right forward. He's like really like.
Yeah, well, I don't know what he was planning on doing. Was he gonna like grab her or something? He's like coming up. It's like, Jesus, dude, like settle down.
He comes right forward, and then all of a sudden goes, dunk, and keels over.
Yeah.
And I don't think at this point does she shout Sadako at this point?
Yeah, she does. Either in this or in Ring 2, and during this part, she looks around and she outs her fucking daughter immediately. Yeah. She's like, "Sadako, did you do that?" And it's like, dude, it's your daughter. Don't say that.
Sadako runs off, and you never see Sadako's face. You always
it's just a young girl, hair in front of her face, and she runs off.
Yeah,
you see her face in Ring 0, and it's like, no. She's too like angelic and pretty, and that shouldn't be allowed. I never needed to see her face. It's way creepier when you never saw her face, and it was just like,
or just the eye,
and hair.
Yeah.
So they see the whole thing. Reiko basically runs towards them, and she's kind of transported into the vision as well, like you said.
Yeah.
And she runs away. Yeah, so she's like transported into it, isn't she? Because Sadako runs away,
yes,
and runs up to Reiko, who is now like in that period at that time, and she grabs Reiko by the hand. And then Reiko basically is woken up by Ryuji, but she's got Sadako's mark.
Yeah.
And
yeah, so she's got a black hand print
yeah.
on her arm.
Yeah. And then it's been a taxing day, and they're like, well, let's fuck off this island.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they are told can't do that because there's this really bad storm approaching. And they're basically,
it's basically they're struck for time, and Ryuji now believes, okay, there's more to this than just, he's beginning to believe now. He's properly sort of like worried.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, we need to get back to sort of.
He heads down to the dock, doesn't he? He's like, I'm going to find someone that'll do it.
And Reiko goes back to the hotel, and she gets a call from her friend,
mm-hmm.
who tells her that he can find basically no information on
Sadako,
or Akuma.
Yeah.
So
she goes to join him down on the dock, and Takashi's
and like all these fishermen going, "Fuck off, we ain't taking you out there."
There's all these fishermen that are like, "Fuck no," and then Takashi comes along and he's like, "You know when I told you that everyone's gonna fucking die at sea? Well, I guess this is my night. I'll take you back. Sod it."
If she wants to take me with the sea, then she can.
Yeah, well, I guess he's like kind of resigned to his fate at this point. He's like, fine, if Sadako wants to take me, she can take me, whatever. So they head back to Tokyo despite the weather. And then we cut to Monday, and there's only one day left now. Things
they have this sort of conversation about the sort of about the sort of how these stories start. I don't know actually was this on the other when they were going over, or I can't remember. There's a conversation which is he's slightly more serious about when she's saying, "Oh, how do these stories start?" And he was like, "Well, sometimes it's just somebody,
I think it's on the way back they have this conversation, but
wanting to start something, and sometimes they just appear."
Yeah.
The like the collective fears of people start a story.
Yeah. So Reiko and Ryuji discover that effectively the videotape was made like psionically. That's a good word. Well done, Wiki. By Shizuko's daughter Sadako, who's
they call it Nensha in Japan.
Yeah,
it's a form of mental projection onto objects.
Yeah, and
but he does say it's more than that. She was more than that.
Well, yeah, because he says that she was her mother was psychic and powerful, but she was more. Yeah. She was even more powerful.
Yeah.
And they basically, I love that they go back and then back and forth, and they're like, okay, we've got to go back to Izu, because basically Sadako is dead. And it's like her vengeful spirit, her Onryo, is basically killing the teenagers. So they need to go back and find her. So they do so. They go back and they manage to find the well.
And they do get that that sort of like it's a sort of nice scene where she's on the phone to Yuichi, and she says because she left him with his granddad.
Yeah.
And she's sort of talking about she's sort of saying, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Oh, can I go back to school now? I'm bored here." And it's like, "Oh, don't say that. Your granddad will be upset." And he's like, "No, he's laughing." It's just a nice little sweet scene. I like that.
Yeah. He's dead in the next movie.
She's on the phone while Ryuji's in the shop buying buckets and spades and
he's having a great time.
A crowbar.
So they find the well. It's underneath the cabin, and it has been it's got like this concrete slab over the top of it.
Mm-hmm.
But they managed to uncover it, and they basically, I think, Ryuji basically has this vision of her murder.
Yeah.
Of her murder by her father, and
you see her stood over the well.
Over the well, yeah.
And Kuma comes along, basically just bashes her over the head with a
hammer or something,
tree limb or something, and she just goes straight in. And
I think in Ring Birthday it is like a hammer or something. I think the weapon changes through the movie,
probably.
But yes, she gets hit over the head with something and falls into the well.
Yeah.
Because we get that great thing in Ring 2, I think it's in Ring 2, where they're like, she lived for 30 years in that well.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, that's like, I don't know how that works, but that's disgusting and horrible.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. I guess through like sheer power, because she was witchy power,
mm-hmm.
you know, but she's trapped by concrete and she's just like fucking, I don't know, rotting alive. It's just it's something really sad and really horrific about it at the same time. Or that she just survived out of pure hatred and
I think that's it, isn't it? It's just a pure rage. Must have sustained her, I guess.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrible.
And basically, I think it's supposed to be that her death 30 years later was to do a kid wanting to record something in the cabin because he was away from home, and they put the tape in to record whatever it is. But her death, I think, is what triggered the tape to record her projection that she did in her death throes, sort of thing.
Yeah. So they then spend forever searching through the water, taking up pails of water and trying to find Sadako's body. Because their plan is that, you know, if we appease the spirit, then everything stops.
Mm-hmm.
And just like probably seconds away.
I don't know. They're there for hours, and I don't know about you. Have you ever hauled a bucket of water from a well?
Fucking heavy.
Yes,
but bear in mind
she's a slight girl. She's been doing that for hours.
Yeah, but bear in mind,
eventually she does succumb. Well, but a lot later than I would have thought she did.
Well, bear in mind she is about 2 hours away from dying.
Yes.
You know, that will do a lot to a person, I imagine. You'd be like, okay, every ounce of strength I have. Because it's not just her, it's her son and her ex-husband. Probably doesn't care so much about the ex-husband. But certainly her son, you know, Yoichi is a concern. I agree with you, but I do think, like, given the circumstances, you know...
I'll give it that, yeah.
Yeah. Because we're, like, down to the wire here.
Mm-hmm.
But... they come across the corpse.
Well, first of all, she passes out.
Yes.
So she passes out, and he's like shouting at her to bring the bucket.
I mean, understandably so, as you said.
The bucket, when the bucket comes down and nearly hits him, he's like, "Hey, you're trying to kill me!" And she's not answering, so he climbs back up, talks to her, and he says, "Right, okay, you go back in. I'll haul the water up." So she climbs down there. Oh, and one thing we forgot to mention: when he's climbing down the well, he passes fingernails.
Oh yes, gross. Yeah,
embedded in the wall. Which,
there's like scratches and bloody and like fingernails.
She was desperately trying to claw it, and this is something that you notice on Sadako, and
she's missing her fingernails.
Yeah. So now Riko is in the well, and she starts saying, "Where are you? You know, I know you're here." You know, and she starts sort of searching through the water, trying to find, you know, the corpse of Sadako, and she eventually finds it. And I really like the shot here, because she comes up, and you can see she's got skin.
Yes.
But you know, the hair's covering it, and it as she touches the sort of face, it splits and comes away. It's, you know, it splits down the middle and it comes away. It's what they call it, sloughs off the bone.
Yeah.
And it reveals the skull underneath, which has this like green goo in the eye sockets that starts sort of trickling out of the sockets.
Goo. Yeah,
it's a really cool effect.
It's great.
It's massively simple.
Because
the you know, the way they do it is so quick and simple that you don't need to dwell on, you know, how cheaply it was probably made. You know what I mean?
It's an awesome effect. It works.
Really effective shot.
Yeah.
And she basically just sort of it's like she's comforting her, isn't it? She's
well, the idea is to appease her, right? So they're giving her comfort, and they're basically, you know, trying to chill her out. Yeah, and calm the fuck down, Sadako.
Ryuji basically shouts out, "Hey, you know, time's up."
Yeah.
Good. You're still alive. You're still down there.
Yeah. Well, of course, they believe that they've broken the curse now. That's the assumption. Reiko's still alive, so must be the curse is lifted.
Then you basically get them sat outside with blankets around them and police and ambulances.
Yes, because they presumably reported the corpse and all of that stuff.
Police taking off.
Yeah.
The remains, like, in things.
Yeah. So we cut to the next day. Reggie's at home. And I think he's on the phone to Reiko. He ends his phone.
Well, I think actually don't they say when they're sat there? Doesn't she say something about she says she was murdered by her own father?
Yeah,
and he says if he is her father, he's completely not convinced. That Dr. Akuma was her father at all.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. She got her power from somewhere, and I don't think it was him.
No. Yeah. So anyway, Ryuji's TV turns on.
I quite like this because he's sat in his office and he's happy and he's writing stuff down.
He's giving he's
writing it in English as well. I don't know whether you noticed.
He's giving his girlfriend student A+ in all of her tests.
Yeah,
that's what he's doing.
And he noticed that she altered the board.
Yes.
And he changes it back with a smile, and then the TV comes on.
You get the impression that their relationship might potentially get mended ultimately. Like maybe he's gonna break it off with Mia or me.
Possibly.
But obviously we don't get to that. So. No. The TV turns on, and of course we see the image of the well. This is one of the best shots I have. When I saw this the first time, this shot, there is that wonderful moment. So she crawls out of the well slowly, climbs out of the well, and then of course she's walking towards in picture, walking towards the camera.
Yeah,
and then ultimately. You get that wonderful moment where you're like, is she in the TV? Is she not in the TV? And in 1998, this was a pretty effective effect.
It really was, yeah.
Where I think it's her hair at first, isn't it? The hair kind of flops out.
Yeah, the sort of top of her head sort of merges through and her hair comes down.
Yeah, it's a wonderful shot.
It's really great.
And if you've been watching the whole time, and if you've taken in the tension of the music and the tension of the cinematography and everything building up. This scene in isolation probably isn't that creepy, but if you've watched the whole film up to this point,
I think it's been listed as one of the greatest moments in horror. So I think it still holds up.
No, it holds up. I don't think it works in isolation. I think
there are a lot of people that have just seen that.
Yeah, scene. And I don't think it works as just that scene. I think you need to watch the movie. 100%.
I don't know. It's sufficiently creepy enough. A girl coming out of the TV.
It kind of is, but you'd lose so much. Like the build up to this is as
his
important.
Reaction is great.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, it's Sanada, right? Yeah. He's just a top.
Absolutely horrified, and he tries to phone
Reiko
and say about Yoichi's not safe. It's not. It's not. We didn't break the curse, sort of thing. But all she hear, she answers the phone, and all she can hear is basically him dying.
Yeah.
You get the dialect effect again.
Yeah.
The negative on the freeze frame.
Yeah. You get that great shot where she looks at him.
Yeah.
Because he knows what's coming, and he kind of looks up, and you just see her eye through the hair, and
you see
her
eye. And what I love about this. So first of all, Rei Ino was the actress for Sadako, and she was a kabuki theater performer.
Yeah.
So she knew how to do the exaggerated movements
and creepy crawling and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and they basically did that shot where she came out of the well. They did it fit. It was backwards, and then they.
But that's what makes it way creepier is that it's reversed. That reverse makes it really unnatural and
really
weird.
Janky, isn't it?
It's awesome.
Really odd movements. And the eye is one of the male crew members.
How is it?
Yeah, it's one of the male crew members, and he cut his eyelashes off
Oh, wow.
To get the sort of the weirdness.
It is really weird when you look at it. And you can't quite place it when you see it. It just looks really odd.
Yeah, it's a really fucking cool shot. Just the eye is just great.
It's fantastic. So yes, he is dead as fuck. He's very
dead. And I don't know how far away she lives from.
I'm guessing it's the same town.
Well, it's Tokyo, and I mean Tokyo's relatively big.
Well, yeah, it's huge. Yeah. So I guess maybe the same ward.
Yeah, basically in the time it takes her to get there, the police have already arrived, taken off the body, and cornered everything off. It's like, Jesus Christ, that was fucking quick.
Well, I mean, she might have phoned them.
I guess so.
And said, like, I think someone's going to be dead at this address. Or like, there's an emergency, I just heard someone screaming on the phone.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I guess you could argue, like you said, Tokyo's huge, so maybe she's over somewhere else. But anyway, yeah, as you say, by the time she obviously realizes immediately, because she hears him dying on the phone, she realizes the curse is not broken. It's still very much in effect. For some reason, she's survived. Who knows why?
She gets the students outside.
Yes.
Being massively distraught.
Of course, yeah. And of course he's being brought out. Did we see his face here?
They've already taken the body away.
Ah, right, okay, yeah, we see the face in the next one.
Taken it away.
Yeah.
Because it's like, wow, they've already called it off. They've taken the body away. He's like, wow, that was bloody quick.
I imagine the Japanese don't fuck about when it comes to stuff
well,
like
that's probably true.
I imagine they're far more efficient than we are. Just put it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah. Either way, it's great. Great moment. So of course, Reiku's like, why? Later, obviously distraught. She's like, why did I survive? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it skipped me. Why did it skip me?
What did I do that he didn't?
What did I do that he didn't? And of course, she remembers. We get that flashback to him asking for a copy of the tape.
Well, actually, you get the towel-headed dude pointing at her handbag.
Oh, sorry. No, you're right. Yeah, he points at the handbag, and then she's like, what? And she opens the handbag, and of course, there's a copy of the tape in it.
Yeah.
And she realizes he asked for a copy. I copied the tape. And so the answer she assumes is that copying the tape passes the curse on.
Yep.
So she gets a VCR.
Yep.
And Ryuji's copy of the tape and basically copies it, and she's on the way to her father.
Yeah.
And
no, she doesn't copy it. She says she phones her dad up and says, I need a favor from you. It's like, wow, way to sacrifice your dad, love.
Well, the thing is, though, one would assume, now the sequel shows that she doesn't fucking do this, but one would assume that you'd be like, Dad, even if you think this is mental, this is what's happening, you make a copy yourself and give it to someone else. Yeah. This has to pass on forever.
Yeah. Exactly.
But she doesn't do that because he fucking dies in the next movie. So she just apparently sacrificed her dad. But yeah, so she's like, Dad, I need to ask you a favor. Yeah, so Ringu ends with the idea that they must copy the tape and pass it on.
There's a really nice shot of her driving up the
it's great.
The highway with the Japanese background, Japanese. For fuck's sake, what's the word I'm looking for? Landscape. Jesus Christ.
World.
Japanese landscape, but into the distance. It's a really beautiful shot.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a wonderful shot. And a wonderful movie. I think this is like, oh god, it's.
Well, I think this is the time this came out was a new sort of thing for horror. It started the J horror boom.
It really did, especially over here.
In America, it was mostly at this point still slashers and sort of monstery type stuff, and this was a lot more. It was a lot different. It was
This very briefly changed Western cinema for a few years for horror.
Yeah,
and then of course torture porn happened, and that was the end of that. But for a while,
not really, because
I think that's what killed the sequels.
Yeah, I mean that is true, but I mean what in a greater influence, you can see all of those Conjuring and
Yeah, there's certainly elements of it of
get stuff from this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And weirdly, the director actually he got most of his ideas from Poltergeist.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think like the influences and the way that different cultures take those influences and the way they handle things. And it's interesting when you watch, the first time you're exposed to J-horror, you're like, whoa, this is like groundbreaking stuff. This is amazingly original and like, wow. And then you realize that like most of their stuff is like that. Just like most of our stuff is a certain way. You just realize like that's kind of the way these things are.
I know people have said that it's boring and it's slow, and it's like,
I don't think it is at all.
It's slow, but I don't think it ever drags.
No, and it's very purposeful. It
depends on how some people don't. They want to get into the horror. They want to get straight into it.
Well, people want jump scares.
This is slow build. It's about the tension, and it's about the underlying fear that goes along through this movie. And there are American movies that do that.
Yeah, of course.
Clearly, but this not in that period of the in 1998 it was most, like I said, mostly slasher stuff, or Final Destination-y type stuff. That sort of big showy horror stuff.
Yeah.
This is very subtle. It's very drawn. It takes its time to tell the story.
Well, I mean, this is a movie that like Toho never thought was going to really make much of a profit. I think Toho thought like maybe we'll break even, make a little bit of money, whatever.
It made 1.5 million and it made 19.
They had no idea the kind of hit they had on their hands, and how influential this movie would become.
And I actually really love all the movies that came after. I mean, The Grudge, Dark Water.
I think Grudge is my least favorite, but yeah,
Grudge is my least favorite as well. I actually prefer Dark Water.
I think I might in some ways prefer Dark Water to this. I love Dark Water so much. It's such a wonderful movie. I don't know if it's better than this. It's on a par for me.
Yeah, and things like The Eye from.
I like The Eye. The Eye's really good. And
almost all of them got American remakes. So some better than others.
Yeah. Oh God, what was it called? Is it Shutter? Shutter? The camera one?
Yeah, I think.
Not The Eye. I can't think what the name of it is.
I think
that might be the remake. I can't remember what it was called, but
I know the one you mean. Yeah.
You know the one I mean.
Yeah, they've all they all have that really cool sort of J horror.
Yeah.
Thing, and I think also this was one of those movies. This movie took off so much that people I know that weren't into Japanese cinema or foreign movies
got into it through this.
We're like, hey, what's this movie? This Japanese movie I'm hearing about, where the girl comes out of the TV and stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, so like normies were going to and watching this movie. It was so when normal people are going to see a Japanese movie, it's like, wow, this is really something here.
Yeah,
it really sort of embedded itself in people's minds, and it's a great sort of snapshot at the time of what was really affecting people. What was really sort of people were finding interesting. Because I mean, the movie's basically been interpreted as the sort of the fear of modernity and modern technology, and but rooted in sort of traditional past sort of horror or ghosts, if you like.
Yeah.
Even the Sadako character is based on I say real story
folklore.
About the ghost in the well of the castle. Is it Kyoto Castle? I can't remember which castle it is now, but it's based on that story, which is to do with a spirit that was a woman that was, depending on the version, it's basically a woman that was tortured and murdered and thrown in the well, and it's to do with counting plates.
Mm-hmm.
She basically she was accused of breaking, depending on the version, she was accused of breaking a plate, and she counts them. So she's constantly going 1 to 10. But when she gets to 9 and she can find the 10 one, she shrieks, and that's in this sort of horror sort of way, and so Sadako was sort of based on that, that ancient, well, not ancient, but traditional ghost story.
Yeah. Well, Matt, I'm torn. I have the tartan DVD version of this film, and I have the beautiful Arrow upscaled Blu-ray of this film.
Yeah.
Cleaned up picture, gorgeous. I cannot argue with the transfer and the work that Arrow do. Arrow always do fantastic work.
Yeah.
There's something too clean about it in this film, though. Where like this movie, I think it's because I watched it like in like that kind of grainy, janky, and there's something more unsettling about that than when you see it in like 1080 or 4K. It's like, oh, there's something off.
Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of 4K restorations.
Oh, I am for certain things.
I mean, a lot of the time it sort of strips away the.
It depends. It really depends.
The character of the movie.
Sometimes not. I think I've got some wonderful restorations of the Universal Horror, the second Universal Horror run, which is really good.
Does it not take something away?
No, oddly enough, no.
Because I think the problem with especially with older movies, that you can see that you can see the strings more, as it were.
Sure.
You can see the effects better, and it's like, oh,
no,
I think you need a certain amount of grain to hide the edges, as it were.
I think it depends how good of a job they do with the restoration. The Universal Horror ones are fantastic.
Okay.
And the Showa era Godzilla collection's great, but obviously with that you know what you're seeing anyway, so seeing more detail on the janky costume doesn't really matter.
No.
But yeah, there's something about it when it comes to this movie, in particular this movie. I'm like, oh, it's a lovely job they've done, but I still think I prefer that 720, DVD version with the built-in subtitles that you can't turn off.
Yeah, and when I originally saw it, it was on
good old VCD. That didn't last. VCDs.
Yeah. Oh, picture was. I remember very grainy on that. So yeah, and that I think it adds to
the creepiness, for sure.
Yeah,
but I honestly cannot recommend Ringu enough. If you've never seen it, 100% recommend.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing, and it's not full of the jump scares that you would expect from sort of ghost sort of story. It's more about the tension, more about the sort of the building fear.
And in fact, in many ways, Dark Water is a much more traditional ghost story. You've got a lot more scares and a lot more creepy moments, overtly creepy moments in Dark Water. Here it is that underlying tension and that bubbling tension. It boils over in the end, but it takes the movie to get there.
And I think I would say to a lot of people, just watch the first one.
Yeah, I would.
Unless you really want to get into the weirdness and the sort of the story.
I love the mythos they start to build with Ring 2. But
I like the weird sort of.
Me too.
Sadako split into two people, and there were two versions of her, and I think for a normal person it would be
just take it as a one-off movie, yeah.
Yeah, but so for just your casual horror fan, I would say watch the first one. It's its own thing. You don't really need anything else.
There are some great. There are some shots I love in Ring 2, though.
Yes, there are.
I love the mental asylum bit when she walks past the TV and it goes off and all the mental people start going freaking out.
Yeah.
There's some lovely shots, and the bit with the clay face coming out of the well and stuff. Oh, yes. There's some really good moments.
There are some
but
great
you're right.
things.
It kind of goes off the rails after the first one.
But I would say to a casual horror fan.
Yeah, I agree.
That might be a bit.
I think you're right.
It might be a bit much for you. You might not want to bother.
No.
And I would definitely leave the
birthday. Yeah, for sure.
But I think if you're a horror fan and you haven't seen these movies, I would give them a go, and even watch for the true sort of weirdness and a weird fan.
Spiral.
watch Spiral and stuff, because I mean, it's more sci-fi than horror, but it is interesting stuff.
And then make sure when you get to the later movies, when you get to the Sadako movies, make sure if you go that far that you Wikipedia which movie it's a sequel to, because they split off. Yeah. And some of them are actually sequels to Spiral, and some of them are sequels to Ringu, and confusing.
I still haven't seen the
Sadako versus Kayako.
Yeah, still haven't seen that one. Yeah. I know you reviewed it.
I mean, it's funny.
We've discussed it.
It's fun.
It just sounds like they just wanted to go mental and have.
That's pretty much. It's Freddy versus Jason
against each other.
Yeah. It's cool. I enjoyed it, but it's obviously not gonna have the tension of Ringu.
Yeah. I mean, if you go for the there are comics and there are stories and stuff, and there's even a story that basically takes place after the apocalypse, basically, and almost everybody's dead, and Sadako meets the ghost from the well, the ghost that she's based on,
right? And
there's a weird sort of interaction between those two, and that's, I haven't read it, but that's like, so the wider expanse of this movie is fucking odd and weird and kind of cool, really.
Yeah,
but as I said, for just your casual horror fan, just watch this movie and give it a chance.
I agree.
And don't just be go with it. Just be prepared that it's a slow burn. It's not your chuck at everything at the screen at once sort of movie.
Yeah, I agree. But yes, that was Ringu. Highly recommended. We will be back next week with our usual, review fare. I need to find some films to watch.
I mean, I've already seen Full of the House of Usher. Have you seen that yet?
No, I have not. Mark Hamill, right?
He is in it, yes.
Yeah.
He's actually really good in it.
Yeah, so I hear.
You've seen all the others, yes? Midnight Mass and...
Yeah, loved it.
Yeah. So I'm not saying, I'm not giving too much away, but I would suggest watching it.
Cool. Well, we will be back next week with that. Until then, stay safe, take care, and we will catch you next time.